How Dogman drove my friend insane. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I was hiking in the Devil's Tramping Grounds in North Carolina with a couple of my friends when we happened upon a dog-headed hairy humanoid who made eye contact with me. In that instant, I saw someone that looked like myself. Then, I realized I was in fact seeing myself through the eyes of the Dogman. That was when I realized that, even though he was somewhat hunched over, the Dogman had to look down to see me. I had never seen a photo of myself taken looking down at me, so I literally didn't even recognize myself for the first half second. The sensation of seeing through the Dogman's eyes faded, but there remained a residual, almost instinctual awareness, an awareness of what he was seeing as he continued to look at me. Judging by the way his head was twisted to the side in a curious fashion, he had just seen my view, looking up at him. My two buddies dragged me out of there. I was too confused to even know how to flee. I'm not trying to say I wasn't scared of this 7 or 8 foot tall upright walking dog-headed monster man, because nobody's that brave, and I'm no hero. I'm just saying that my confusion and amazement temporarily overruled the fear, and I fell into a sort of shocked daze over what was happening. I was dragged away backward looking at the Dogman. He looked back at me, but he did not follow us. He just stood there, watching us go. My days went back to being fairly normal after this incident, but my nights were haunted with occasional momentary glimpses of what the Dogman was seeing, what the Dogman was hunting, where the Dogman was walking, and what the Dogman was doing. I imagine he got flashes of the episodes of South Park and the Boondocks that I was watching. So my two buddies that also saw the Dogman wanted to meet up in person to discuss what had happened. They wanted us to go over what we had seen, what we all agreed happened, what only one of us thought happened, etc. Let's call my bossy leader friend Mo, and let's call my friendly and fun-loving friend Shemp. And let's call me Larry, because I would have rather been off somewhere playing my fiddle than discussing the North Carolina Dogman any further. Once we got together, Mo and Shemp said we should all draw the creature as we remember it looking, then compare the drawings. We all separated to do the drawings so that we wouldn't copy from each other, and I found that I was having a hard time of it. When I would try to think back of what the Dogman looked like, I would only visualize my own image, as the Dogman looked down on me from his greater height. I did a sort of a cartoon of the three of us looking scared, as seen from the point of view of the Dogman himself. When I showed it to the others, obviously they were confused, but it finally opened up a conversation. I hadn't even tried to explain to them before that I had been seeing through the Dogman's eyes, because I wasn't sure for quite some time how to even put that into words. Even saying it that way is sort of just poetic. I wasn't literally seeing through his eyes, yet I could see what he was seeing. How that happened, or even what exactly was happening, both still remain a mystery to me. It took some time to convince Mo and Shemp that I wasn't kidding, that I really had seen what the monster was seeing. And then, once they believed me, their initial decision was that I therefore had no data to add regarding what the monster looked like, so therefore I should be quiet while they compared their drawings. Neither Mo nor Shemp can draw very well, but they both had sketched out a hairy brown animal holding its arms out in front of it. Its claws were splayed in a threatening manner in both drawings, and both showed the creature's upright, pointed ears. Mo had indicated large teeth, while Shemp went the extra mile and actually drew some blood dripping from the Dogman's fangs. I asked if its teeth were really bloody, and then Shemp sheepishly admitted that the blood was just an artistic statement on his part. Essentially, both had drawn a brown werewolf. They had legs that bent like a dog's, not like a man's. The ears and body profile were not like bears, and the face and snout were canine in nature. This was a werewolf-type creature. Shemp had tried to indicate that the eyes were lit up and shiny, while Mo had left that part out. When he saw it in Shemp's drawing, however, he claimed then to remember that detail. Whether this was a real memory or one suggested by Shemp's drawing, I will never know. Mo wanted to go back to the Devil's Tramping Ground, but I did not. I was having a hard time of it, with the nightly visions of whatever disgusting animalistic thing that Dogman had gotten up into that time. I'm not even going to go into some of the kinds of things I saw some nights, and you can thank me for that later. I saw what he saw. I sensed what he thought. I saw how he killed. I learned that he celebrated the creation of fear. He feasted on fear just as much as he did on blood and flesh. If an animal can be sick or depraved, then that's what this Dogman was or is. I suppose depravity is an outgrowth of civilization, so a new word would need to be created in order to express the particular brand of savagery that this Dogman exhibits. This is sort of the Marquis de Sade of the animal world, and I found myself growing increasingly distanced from reality and in a state of gloom and foggy depression. Finally, Mo convinced me that this was why I should go back into the Devil's Tramping Grounds. If I could make eye contact with that Dogman again, maybe the phenomenon would stop and my life would return to normal. That didn't make any sense to me, but the idea of returning to normal was so appealing. I pretended that he was being logical. Now, the Devil's Tramping Grounds is not just a nickname. It's the official name of this location, okay? We don't mess around in North Carolina. We even call that part of State Road 1100 Devil's Tramping Ground Road. Why do we do that? I have no idea at all, but I bet you that some serious stuff went down in that forest a long time ago for people to give the place a name like that. That thing I saw, or I should say that thing I saw myself through, that would have been called a devil back in the past, wouldn't it? Especially if you saw through its eyes the way I did. It might not be Satan from the Bible, but that creature would certainly be called a forest devil or a wood devil, wouldn't it? I think it could have been. I agreed to go back to the Devil's Tramping Ground on one condition, that we brought more people this time and were better prepared. Mo promised me that he had everything under control and that he would handle it. I arrived at the pre-designated meeting spot on the night in question, and only Mo was there. I asked him where all the others were. I asked him where the better equipment was. He made a lot of noise that sounded like he was answering me, but he wasn't saying anything. Not only had he failed at getting more people to come into this godforsaken landscape with us, but even Shemp was too frightened to come back to the Devil's Tramping Grounds. Even Shemp was smarter than the two of us. I should have just gotten back in my car and driven out of there. But then the most interesting part of this story would never have happened. While Mo and I were arguing in this area we were parked in next to the woods that night, I suddenly got a flash from the Dogman. I saw where he was, and he was not all that far away from where we were. He might have gotten a vision of where I was, too. I tried to tell Mo that the Dogman was nearby, but he was still going on, arguing his previous point in our argument. I kept repeating that the Dogman was coming, and he kept failing to understand that these were statements of fact, and not me arguing with him. I had another flash of the Dogman, and he was much closer. He was a minute or two away. He did see where I was. He, in fact, was coming in our direction, on purpose, and with a purpose. In that moment, I could literally say that the Dogman was coming to get me. I tried again to talk sense to Mo. I told him that we had to leave. He was still arguing points from minutes earlier. He was locked in competition. He was not hearing anything I was saying. Giving up, I ran for my car. I knew the Dogman was about to walk into that clearing. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to risk looking him in the eye again. I got in the car, and I saw the creature emerging from the woods. I averted my eyes, but I still saw its massive body standing on those canine legs, and I saw it walking toward Mo, who was still shouting things at me in my car. Suddenly, Mo's chatter ceased, and he screamed. I knew he had looked at the Dogman. I knew he had looked into its eyes. I wanted to stay and help him, but I had to get out of there. I was consumed by fear, and I was shivering and weeping, and I just drove away, leaving my friend there, with a Dogman looking right at him. That was the end of my experience with the Dogman. The visions stopped. The feeling of connection with the beast was over. But that was only the beginning for poor Mo. He was now the one rocked with visions of horror every single night. He was now the one forced to know the terrible things that a Dogman does for amusement. He became unstable. He was unable to hold down any job. In an earlier age, he'd have probably been locked up as insane. One day, Mo came to me at my home for a visit. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in a month. He told me he was leaving. I asked where he was going to, and he said north. I asked why, and he said migration. He was going to follow the Dogman north as it migrated. He was going to try to see it again, but he asked me if I wanted to come with him. He should have known I would say no. I heard he talked Shemp into going with him. He needed to bring somebody. As I learned, the only way to get free of the Dogman visions is to get him to look deep into someone else's eyes. You can only free yourself by imprisoning someone else. And that's how Dogman drove my friend insane. Dogman in the headlights on a country road. Dear Scary Stories NYC. Imagine you're a kid and it's a long time ago. Your parents put you in your pajamas, then bring you out to the car. You're expecting to be driven to the drive-in movie theater, but your father misremembered the directions, and you start to realize that your family is lost in the middle of nowhere, out in the country, not even close to the drive-in or anything else using electric lighting. Your parents are arguing bitterly, their snarling voices betraying more than a little fear. Maybe it's just around the next left turn, you think, trying to stay positive. Maybe it's just around the next left and Mom and Dad will forget the terrible things that they just said to each other. You think that. And then your dad drives around that next left. And instead of seeing the drive-in movie theater, you see a Dogman walking in front of a barn silo. That's not only lost, that's about as lost as you can get in this world. Back when I was a little kid, my parents were huge fans of the drive-in theater near where we lived. I may have been conceived there, but I have no memory of the place. When we moved to a suburb of Pittsburgh while I was still very young, Dad heard about the Silver Drive-In from a friend at work. The ironic part of the story I'm about to tell you is that the Silver Drive-In Theater is not all that far out of town. Well, some town or another. It's not that rural. It's just that Dad misremembered the directions, and we ended up in some kind of prehistoric primeval forest or another. When I look at the map, I see that on one side of the theater exists Laurel Ridge State Park, and on the eastern side there's Galitzin State Forest, which I'm probably mispronouncing, and also, frighteningly, State Game Lands number 26. When my dad got us lost, he got us lost in a hunting zone, or one where wild animals roamed as protected species. He couldn't just miss the exit by one or anything like a normal person would do. At least things always felt epic around Dad. So, we were lost in some forest instead of watching a double feature. And once we came out from under the dark tree cover to the moonlit night once again, about to pass an ancient-looking old barn, out walked a monster, just like a werewolf from the movies. When our car's headlights lit it up, The creature seemed to recoil from the light, holding its clawed hand in front of its eyes and squinting in surprise at their unexpected brightness. Dad actually lowered his high beams, which was a mistake as it turned out. I know because Dad lectured me about this until I was in my late 20s, when he finally gave up hope for me. His mistake was backing down, lowering the high beams. That was perceived by the beast as a show of weakness, and that was the reason everything else happened. When Dad lowered the lights, the creature charged the car. Although it had been better illuminated when standing in front of us on the road, as it ran over closer, I could understand better what I was looking at. This was a canine, but it ran on 2 legs. It might be a werewolf, but its head had more accent on the wolf and less on the were. The snout was longer than what I would normally associate with a wolfman or werewolf, but then again, I'd only ever seen them in movies and comic books and other kinds of fiction before that moment. The ears were very tall, and kind of like a Doberman's ears, but quite upright. When it first appeared on the road, I thought I was seeing a rabbit or hare, or maybe kangaroo because of those ears. But the teeth were not rodent teeth, and the mouth was not any sort of rabbit or marsupial that I'm aware of. I probably knew more about different kinds of animals back then as a kid, because it's something non-controversial you can teach kids about, animals. Animals don't upset the PTA. So, my mind kept flipping through the animal flashcards and videos that I could remember, and I kept coming back to it being canine. I was really into categorizing things when I was that age. I loved to sort and alphabetize and solve Encyclopedia Brown mysteries before the ending. I watched as this furious thing that looked like a rabid, over-muscular Doberman ran on its hind legs over to the car and pounded its paws on the front hood. It sure did look shaggier than a Doberman, though, and grayer as well. My father was infuriated that the Dogman had dared to treat his car that way, and he shouted a list of weird and ineffectual threats at the beast as though it understood English. The Dogman ignored Dad and came around to the side that my mother was sitting on in the front and I was sitting on in the back. He began slamming his shoulder hard into her door, and Mom screamed bloody murder. She and I were both telling my father to drive, please drive, but he wasn't finished yet, giving that Dogman a little piece of his mind. I looked out the window at the Dogman, still lost in my head in the idea of trying to understand and classify that creature outside the car. The creature noticed me, then its eyes darted to the lock on the door, which was in the up or open position. That dog was giving crazy eyes to that up lock button, as though he knew that meant my door was unlocked. Somehow, a dormant part of my brain called my survival instinct suggested that perhaps we should lock that door before the Dogman opens the door and pulls me out of the car. I mounted a counter-argument in my head which began with the notion that a dog can't open a car door because a dog doesn't have thumbs. But then, the Dogman moved swiftly toward the outside handle of the car door as though he were going to try to open that door anyway. As he moved toward the door handle out there, I dove for the lock inside, intending to tap it down and remain alive. While all this was taking place, my dad finished telling off the Dogman and put the car in drive. We lurched forward as the Dogman reached the door and I pushed the lock down. The car was moving forward and picking up speed, but the door had been pulled slightly open while being locked. It was in that jiggly purgatory of neither being an open door nor a closed door. I remember trying to pull the door closed, as the Dogman on the outside tried to pull it open. I remember wishing that car door handles could be designed so that werewolves would not be able to open them, and I do believe progress has been made in the years since then in that direction. Also, car locks are not so easily judged as locked or not as they were in those days. So there we were, trying to get away from a Dogman chasing us bipedally and occasionally tugging on my door, with me trying to hold my door closed My mother screaming at my father to drive faster, and my father shouting about how he didn't know where he was even driving to. We finally started to get some distance between us and the creature, so I wanted to unlock my door, open it, and close it properly. My mother refused to allow me to do that as it would be dangerous. I argued that keeping it only half closed was dangerous too. We came to a stop sign and my father actually stopped. There was no traffic and we had just lost sight of the Dogman behind us a minute ago, so it didn't seem very logical to stop. Mom shrieked at Dad, telling him to drive until we were back in civilization. While she was ignoring me, I opened my door, slammed it shut, and locked it properly. Then, I looked out the back window, and I saw the Dogman. He had already caught up to us. Dad drove like the lunatic we had all suspected that he really was. None of us had any idea where we were or where he was going. And then, we started to see signs of civilization. Soon, there it actually was. The Silver Drive-In Movie Theater. I forget what was playing, some family movie, but it was a glorious sight to see. A happy ending to our story. I celebrated in the back seat as Dad told me to sit still and went to talk to the man in the ticket booth. After a few minutes, he came back and said he'd gotten the directions right. This time. We started driving away. We had finally reached the theater, and all my father did was ask for directions how to get home. When I complained, I got bellowed at that I couldn't expect my mother to sit through a movie after enduring so much stress or something like that. Besides, we already missed the beginning, and my father hated to miss the beginnings of movies. I kept hoping we'd see another monster on our way home, but no such luck. This time, Dad actually did remember the directions, and it was all normal highways with other traffic on it, not gravel roads in the country in the dark. I've been waiting my entire life for a second glimpse at Dogman or any kind of cryptid, but I've never come across one ever again. Not since the night that I saw Dogman in the headlights on a country road. Every now and every then, our executive producer is Brian N. Dollar, Deutschmark, ruble, or yen. You can't go wrong with our Brian. Please join us in thanking another of our newest channel members, Brian N. In return, Brian gets to see our secret, uncensored, scary stories. Dogman experience is far too wild to ever tell on this channel. You can become a channel member too by either joining our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com or else by clicking that join button under this or any of our videos. Now here's our spokes dog, Henry Lee Dogman, to explain the rest. Hank? Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com. And that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal subscribers club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LASCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.